We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Buddy, do I have a story to rip for you off the top of this podcast? People have been asking, where did the stories go? You know, I used to tell a lot of dating stories. I've been kind of out of the game for a little bit. Not trying. One, it's draft season. Two, dating in COVID sucks.
Well, also, it's around the holidays. You know, let's go on a date right before Christmas. That's really
weird.
work.
Yeah.
And then you got to buy her a present if it goes well.
Oh, it's a very good point.
No, probably not.
That's a very good point. I've been out of the dating game for a little bit, but I have an absolute gem. People often ask me, what's the worst first date you've ever had? What's the worst date you've ever had? And a lot of the times you get asked that question, people get asked that question. They're like, oh, let me think. There's a clear cut for me. There's an obvious answer for me. And I'm going to open with this one, then we'll jump into the podcast here. But we need these dating stories. It's one of the best stories I've got. So, meet this chick on a dating app. And one of my things on the dating apps is I don't really like to talk a ton in the dating app before meeting the person because I feel like I freaking hate it. Whatever. It's just like mindless conversation. How are you? Doing well. What do you do? I don't care. Cool. Yeah. So I say, let's grab coffee early in the conversation. She says, let's do it. Don't talk to her.
These coffee dates.
Day of, she's like, hey, can we pivot to brunch? It's like, okay, she wants some food. I'm in.
Brunch is good.
Brunch is good. So we go to a brunch spot in Cincinnati. I make nothing of it. We go there. First thing she orders, can I get a club soda with lime? Interesting drink order. I never seen it before. I get a coffee. Then, as we're kind of going forward, she's like, do you want to get mimosas? She's like, you know what? Mimosas, brunch, let's run it. Having a good time here. Let's do it. I order mimosas from the waiter. He walks away. She's like, wait, if we're going to get mimosas, we might as well get a pitcher. And I was like, oh, now I get the club soda with lime. She was kind of wanting to drink, but didn't get it. Now we're going in. We get the pitcher. I run down the waiter. We get the pitcher of mimosas. We go through the pitcher, split it about 50-50, having a good time. She's like, you want to run it back? Another pitcher. I was like, dude, this chick's driving the wheel here. Saturday, I'm feeling it. Let's run another pitcher. Grab another pitcher. This is more of a 60-40 split. She's kind of leaning heavily. She poured the last of mine into hers. She's like, oh, yeah. I was like eating or whatever it was. Then I asked something along, this is where the story gets good. I asked something along the lines of like, I'm starting to feel a little drunk, like not drunk, but tipsy or whatever. And they're like, oh, what kind of drunk are you? And she says, I like to drive when I black out. Full stop. I like to drive when I black out. And I kind of like laughed a little, but then she was being serious. And then she like immediately follows that up with, I have 3 DUIs in the last 3 months. I was like, oh my God. So here's the thing.
I shouldn't be laughing.
Here's the thing about DUIs.
Tragic.
Here's the thing about DUIs. You know, everyone, it happens all the time. It's a mistake, whatever. It's reckless, but I'm not gonna kill her for it. My dad has, 3 DUIs. Or maybe 4 DUIs. I don't know how many that guy's got. But immediately I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And she's like, yeah, that's why I had an Uber here. I have a suspended license, blah, blah, blah. I was like, immediately, and I was like, when do you get your license back? And she says, oh, I don't know. And immediately like word vomit. I'm like, oh, you don't know? You haven't been to court yet? She's like, no. And then like word vomit, because I know from my dad, that's going to be really expensive. She's like, really? I was like, oh, buddy, if you don't know that yet, that's going to be really expensive trying to get that license back and go through those DUIs. I'm telling you. She said the last one she got caught at, she fell asleep at a red light. It's freaking brutal. It was a rough state of being. But we continued the date. I'm here for the story at this point. Next thing she suggests, she says, after the brunch, trying to go to a brewery. It's like, oh man, we're riding or die here. We go to a brewery.
You're like an enabler right now.
We go to a brewery. She gets a beer. I get a water. She gets another beer. I get a water. And then she says, side part of the story, she sees a motorcycle. She's like, do you have a motorcycle? I said, no. She's like, well, my ex did. I was like, well, should I freaking go get a license right now? Either way. Then she says, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I was like, why? And she's like, I just been sober for 21 days. Now I immediately start apologizing. I'm like, oh my gosh, man. I'm so sorry. I didn't try and like get beers. I wasn't trying to get you drinks. She's like, no, that's my decision. It's my decision. It's my decision. Whatever.
It is.
After the brewery, she's like, oh my gosh, I got to work at 2. Works as a waitress. She said she was a Spanish teacher. Here we are. She works as a waitress at a restaurant downtown. She's slugging, though, is the problem. And then she goes to drink, but she goes to work and she's like a little tipsy. I wouldn't call her drunk necessarily. And she's like, we should hang out after work and like watch a movie. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know if I want to make that play. Then she goes to work. Don't want to hear from it. I leave. I immediately call like a bunch of my friends and I'm like, dude, I just went on the most insane date ever. She texts me during work. She's like, oh my gosh, I got sent home for being too drunk. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel so bad. Like this is rough. She's in a rough situation, a rough state of mind. Then here's the kicker. Best part of the story. I say, oh, that's crazy. Something along those lines. Don't text her for a couple days. Then she says, out of the blue, hey. I say, hey, what's up? Have you given any more thought to hanging out again? And I say something along the lines of, oh, maybe I'm busy. I have a lot of work, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you know what? On second thought, I don't really want to hang out again. You talk too much. I'll see you later. I come out of this first date absolutely roasted. And I do talk too much, but I didn't think I'd be the guy getting turned down.
She hit you with the old you can't quit, you're fired.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
It was the you can't quit, you're fired. Exactly was what it was. But it was an absolutely absurd date. She had some in between all of that. What doesn't make the story is she had some insane stories, like family background, all this stuff. She had some crazy things.
She seemed really like emotionally sad by it. It didn't seem like she'd be that crazy.
It was so worst date in terms of like, oh my gosh, blown away all the way through, but best date in terms of the story. Very, very good stuff. All right, let's jump into what we came to the podcast for and roll through this here. We got to start with recapping the College Football Playoff Championship. Your immediate thoughts off Devontae Smith going for what? Over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah, it was a blowout. Like, it was just like they did not belong in the same field. No one belonged in the same field, seemingly, with Alabama this year. I mean, and we're going to see it come draft time. I still think there's a good chance. If I could put a 50-50 bet right now, plus 100 on Alabama tying at least Miami's record for 6 first-rounders, I would. I think they get 6 first-rounders. Like, this team is utterly loaded with talent, offensively, defensively. But my immediate takeaway from Devontae Smith is that I'm going to be the guy who's the hater all draft season because he's wide receiver 3 for us. And I don't really foresee that necessarily changing. Yeah, he's number 8th on our board. Like, I hate a guy who's 8th on our board. I'm going to be seen as that guy. But
yeah, which is ridiculous.
But you look at those 3 touchdowns. If you're drafting any wide receiver in the first, I think if you're drafting any wide receiver straight period, he scores on those touchdowns. A flat route, that orbit motion, and a deep crosser where he ran a straight line. Those were a big part of his perception is purely his production, purely the numbers in that offense. And a lot of it was because he was the guy that they were scheming it up for in that offense. If Waddle was the guy that they were scheming up for in the offense, Waddle wins Heisman. Like, I still think there are reasons to, like, you're still projecting what they physically can do to the NFL level. And yes, I love Devontae Smith. He's a fantastic player, but the hype is going to be a little much for me, I'm guessing.
I mean, right now you're seeing ESPN mock him at 2 to the Jets.
Yeah, that's
other people have mocked him at 3 to the Miami Dolphins. I feel that is too rich. I don't think he should be the first wide receiver off the board, and I don't think he should go as high as 2 or 3. And then again, like you and I even say myself are going to be marked as haters when you go back into Twitter timeline. I said last year that he has a real shot at being wide receiver 1, seeing what he did in 2019. And even now, after elevating his stock in 2020, the reason you're going against Devontae Smith as wide receiver 1 is from a traits perspective. Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle are more rare. Their traits are more rare. And when you talk about drafting for value in the first round, positional value, first and foremost. Secondarily, you need to draft rare athletes with rare traits because that is what is hard to come by on day 2 and day 3 or later even in the first round. I think Devontae Smith, as polished as he is, he's a technician, great release point, great production. You look at traits from a size and athleticism perspective, he's not on the same plane as Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle. Those guys bring more rare ability to the table, and that's why he's a big reason why he's wide receiver 3, but still a top 10 player on our board.
Yeah,
right behind Jalen Waddle, like 7 Jalen Waddle, 8 Devontae Smith. You're not a hater by any means.
Yeah.
You're calling him a top 10 player in the draft, even though he's 6'1", 170 pounds, soaking wet. That I think is respect, if anything. So
to me, if you're looking for a guy who was like the most impressive from a draft perspective, it was Christian Barmore defensive tackle at Alabama. 5 pressures in the game. Presence fell in the run game as well. He ended up finishing the season with a 91.5 pass rushing grade. He was like, Nick Fairley-esque in the title game, Ndamukong Suh-esque, where it's just like, that guy's the best defensive lineman on the field. You're not blocking that guy one-on-one. And I think after kind of inconsistency to start the year, not showing that dominance, he turned it on big when it counted. And I think, one, he's fairly clearly a top defensive tackle prospect. 2, I think he's now fairly clearly a top 20 pick.
One more note on that game before we jump to previewing the divisional round is how much do you think the Trey Sermon injury, I think it was on the first or second play, played a factor in this game? Because some people were saying, man, that was huge. He was a big reason why they won in previous weeks. I don't think it was that big. I think the bigger problem was that they couldn't stop Bama. Bama was scoring at every possession.
Well, yeah.
I don't care if you have Trey Sermon or freaking, I don't care if Ezekiel Elliott walks through that door.
Yeah.
You're not, you need to, Bama scored 50 plus in a championship game. And Seth wrote a really, really good piece. Seth Galina wrote a really good piece for PFF.com talking about just how Ohio State's defense just let them down. Like they played a very simplified approach that they were going to run the same thing that they run against other teams and really just could not do anything against that Bama offense. I don't think Trey Sermon was a huge factor.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think the bigger injury, if we're talking about injuries for Ohio State, well, one was just not having Togi on their defensive line.
Yeah,
like that they had to affect Mac Jones more than they did. And 2, Justin Fields just not being 100%, and he did not look 100% when he started to run, when he started moving the pocket. And so I think that injury was the bigger one. And then, like I said, with their defensive game plan, though, they were never winning that game. They just weren't. My favorite tweet from tonight was Big Cat Barstool. He said, Sark called such a great half, I think it's safe to say Texas is back. And it really was. Like, he was scheming up stuff that was breaking Ohio State's defense, that it didn't really matter who was out there. Ohio State was just going to give up gobs of yardage.
Another bad game for Sean Wade, too. Man, that was a tough.
The free release at the line of scrimmage against Devontae Smith and then like jogging to catch him downfield was awful.
There was also that play with Devontae Smith where they somehow had 32 on him, and it looked. Someone tweeted that it looked like his check engine light came on. Yeah. That was one of the funnier highlights of the thing, because the guy's on his horse, but just in no way, shape, or form keeping pace with Devontae Smith. All right, let's jump to this divisional round preview here. We're going to look at it from a Greenline perspective. Remember, Greenline is a PFF betting dashboard that offers projections on the total, the spread, and the money line for every single game in the NFL and in college football, available in your Elite subscription. Looking ahead to this week, let's go ahead and start with the Rams-Packers games. Packers at home, currently favored by 6.5. Greenline has a lean on the dogs at plus 6.5, and even likes them on the money line at plus 260.
I get why. Because I think it's not factoring in the fact that Aaron Donald has rib injury, Cooper Kupp has a knee injury, Jared Goff has a thumb injury, because all those guys are still going to play. It's difficult to factor that in, but I think it's going to matter still to some degree. And full strength, these two teams, 6.5 is too much for me. But you're talking about Jared Goff with a thumb, or even John Wolford. You're talking about Cali Boy Goff or Florida Boy Wolford.
Wow, Cali Boy Goff. Wait, you're such a dick to Cali people. You're gonna call me Cali Boy?
I'm saying if you were trying to play quarterback in Lambeau when it's 20 degrees,
I'd light your ass
it's
up.
going to be different. It has someone who was born in Milwaukee. I grew up in Champaign. Went to school at Notre Dame, lived in Chicago before then moving to Cincinnati. When it's cold outside, when it's 20 degrees outside, and you're not used to that, it is different to play a sport in, and it sucks absolute balls. Your hands get numb. It's no fun to play. And until you've been acclimated to that, like everyone in Green Bay is right now, it's just your body takes a little bit to adjust. So coming from LA, going up to that actually does matter. And that's why they've been so dominant at home when the weather does turn like that.
How much do you make of this, Brandon Staley defense that is taking over Twitter and the world because of how creative it is and how he's rolling looks? We've talked to Zach Robinson, former PFF analyst who now works on the coaching staff for the Los Angeles Rams. He said, good luck trying to identify our coverages. Good luck trying to chart these things because they are disguised all day long. Do you think this slows down Aaron Rodgers and company at all?
Yeah, I think it does. They have the personnel to do it. I mean, you have a cornerback in Jalen Ramsey that can actually match up with Devontae Adams. And
that's going to be an absolute treat.
A guy who can put pressure on any quarterback in the NFL. It doesn't matter. Like Aaron Donald, there's no game plan for him wholesale. So I do think that they can slow him down, but I still think Aaron Rodgers. Like he's not missing throws this year. So you still can only slow him down to some degree.
Should be a fun one in Lambeau. That one's at 4:35 on Saturday, 4:35 Eastern. Let's jump to what I think is going to be the game of the weekend. I think this is honestly going to be the game of the weekend. It is the Baltimore Ravens going to Buffalo to take on Josh Allen and the Bills. Right now, Bills favored by 2.5, and Greenline has a lean on Buffalo at -2.5. And I think a big reason for that is it's not through that key number. A huge probability or a huge percentage of games land on 3 either side. So when you get through that key number 3, and from a betting perspective, it eliminates a lot of those possibilities and puts you on a certain side. 2.5 is closer to a pick than it is to 3.
Yeah.
Pick being the spread at 0. So I think I would agree that Buffalo at -2.5 at home, as well as Josh Allen has played this year, is probably where I'd lean as well. They even like Buffalo on the money line at -135 if you can get it at that spot. But 2 2018 draft class quarterbacks coming at it. One former MVP. Josh Allen played at MVP levels at certain points of the season. Who do you have in this game, and how big is this for both of those guys in the perception in the NFL?
This is the one game I don't have a take on. I really don't have a good read on because of how I think just the high end of what you could get from either of these quarterbacks any given week. And they can just, like we saw the Titans game last week, they bottled up Lamar Jackson very well. Kept him in the pocket for a good portion of that game. He had one scramble. That's what changed the game. The one scramble was a 48-yard touchdown. They let him out of the pocket once, and it cost them. I think both of these quarterbacks are capable of that big play to change the game. And so I don't really have a great handle on this. I think I'm going to lean Baltimore on this.
Really?
One. I do.
Against the spread or fucking to win this game?
Straight up. I think I'm going to lean Baltimore straight up. But it's, like I said, I don't have a good handle on this game at all. But I do think that secondary, if there's any secondary that can keep with as many pieces. Now, you're not going to keep with, Stephon Diggs one-on-one, but all the pieces that the Bills do have at the receiving, the Ravens have, multiple good corners on that defense.
Man, that's tough. I'd probably lean Buffalo and stick with Greenline here at Buffalo -2.5. I don't know. But I like Baltimore. If you're looking at an upset this week, I know someone tweeted out recently, I think it was Brian Burke of ESPN potentially, tweeting that I think if you had to pick an upset this week, it'd be Cleveland, who are 10-point dogs in Kansas City in Arrowhead. But I think if you had to pick an upset this week, I really like Baltimore or Tampa Bay. Yeah, I think, or it was Brian Burke or someone else. Maybe it would have been someone else. I don't want to quote who it was, but I saw Eric Eager and George Chahuri and then Josh Hermsmeyer jumping in, some of the analytics guys on Twitter talking about it. But I probably lean Buffalo here. Let's jump to that Cleveland game. That's Sunday, 3:05 Eastern. Cleveland right now, 10-point dogs. The lean for Greenline. Anytime you see big dogs like that in the postseason, you can almost expect most betting models to lean on the dog. 10 points in a playoff game is a lot. And we see that here right now, 74% of the cash, but 56% of the tickets. So 74% of the cash is on Kansas City. 56% of the tickets is on the Browns as 10-point dogs. Let's explain that. Tickets, that percentage is squares. Cash, those are the big bettors. Those are the
how many people, the percentage of people that have bet.
Yeah, so a higher percentage of people have bet the Browns, but more of the money is on the Chiefs. So the bigger bettors, the sharper.
So you're saying that Cleveland's poor is what you're saying?
Yeah, no, not Cleveland's poor. I'm saying the people betting on Cleveland right now are squares, and the people betting on Kansas City with the big money are more sharp. So that's where you probably lean there. But I would honestly lean Kansas City here. I'm going to go against Greenline. I don't think
those
Browns.
KC big lines, just fucking love them. I mean, the Kansas City, though, they won a lot of one-score games.
True. They
did win a lot of one-score. And the interesting thing, and I can't wait for this matchup, because everyone and their mother, before every single Chiefs game, how do you beat the Chiefs? Keep the ball at Patrick Mahomes' hands. The Cleveland Browns uniquely qualified to do that. The best running game in the NFL, the best under center running game, the best pure, give it to our old school, give it to our running back on outside zone and let's pound them. Best running game in the NFL, most efficient running game in the NFL. That they have that blueprint now. Can they execute it?
So everyone and their mother says that.
I think so.
It's not me.
I'm not. I'm not sure that. I'm not sure that is the blueprint either.
The blueprint to beat the Chiefs is to not punt.
Yeah.
Never punt. Always score. If you consistently score, you're going to have a chance.
But I do think they also they'll go for it. They're not going to be punting on 4th and 2 from the 42.
And if they do, and they will get rightfully ripped for it. Because as 10-point dogs, I do think spread matters in decision making when it's this big. Like if you are a large dog, you enter the game with a lower win probability based off historical data. You enter the game with lower win probability. You need to find and attack high leverage situations like 4th and shorts near midfield, going for it down near the goal line. All that stuff needs to happen. You cannot be conservative in this game because you're not supposed to win. You're not even supposed to cover 7 points. That's what the probabilities are at right now. Vegas is telling you you're not even going to cover this number at 7 or 3. You need to be attacking. You need to be aggressive, and I hope you see that from Kevin Stefanski, who has been released from his basement to coach this game.
Nice. I also will say, the offense, Baker Mayfield, it's looked kind of good of late.
It has.
Two of his last 3-4 games have been graded over 90. 3 of his last 4 over 80. And it's not like the Chiefs' defense is they're not great.
Yeah,
they haven't been good this year. Defense.
I think Frank Clark has a bottom 5 pass rush win rate when you remove RPOs, play action, screens.
I will obviously pick the Chiefs straight up, but I think against the spread, I'm rolling with Cleveland.
I like it. And also one more thing on Baker Mayfield. I think in that Pittsburgh Steelers game where they go up 28-0 very early, first quarter, I still think there were multiple times in that game where Pittsburgh was sending blitzes or getting pressure on Baker where he had an opportunity to make a mistake. He had an opportunity to fall into what we've seen with bad pocket presence, bad decision-making under pressure, and he didn't. I think you saw some maturity out of Baker Mayfield in that one. Oh, we didn't bring this up about the College Football National Championship. So after the game, they're talking about Mac Jones and how well he's played this year, and they flash back to his freshman season when they won the championship, and he's sticking his tongue out to catch confetti. And he's like, see right there? See, that's how much Mac Jones has gotten more mature. He's not doing that stuff anymore. I was like, are you kidding me? That's not a sign of immaturity. I've been doing the same damn thing. I was blown away at that point made by the broadcast team. That's just nuts to me. All right.
Oh, also, we didn't even touch on the fact that Jalen Waddle was
oh, yeah.
The fuck was that?
Dude, why Jalen Waddle played in that game is absolutely absurd. When they had the video of him running before the game, and I think it was CBS who tweeted out saying oh, looking good. It's like, dude, he's freaking limping.
No, he looks awful. And they also said, someone was saying he was actually running at the same speed, but it just didn't feel as right. It's like, there's no chance you're running at the same speed.
Zero chance.
Yeah, that was.
Dude, he was running routes, and then as soon as he caught it, limping to the sideline.
Yeah.
And did you see Torrey Smith tweet out something in reference to Jalen Waddle about how in his last high school game, he had a bad ankle. Mm-hmm. Or something similar. And his mom was like, you can't play. You shouldn't play. It's going to jeopardize your college career, whatever. And he still played, and he rolled up his ankle and ended up costing him a lot of the offseason preparing for college. And it's someone needed to tell Waddle, because it wasn't going to be Saban. Someone needed to tell Waddle, hey, man, you got to sit this one out. It's best for your future. Even though it shows grit, it shows toughness, all this stuff. I saw someone tweet out recently saying when everyone's dropping out of college bowl games, you have Jalen Waddle showing true grit. It's no, some of that is toughness. And some of that is bad decision making. You can't. I love that he wanted to play, and that would have been enough for me. I really want to play, and him being really upset if you told him you can't or you shouldn't. But I don't think he should have played in that game. All right, last game of the divisional round here. We took a little bit of a pivot. Is Bucks Saints. Saints at home, favored by 3. 51% of the tickets are on New Orleans, but 60% of the cash is on the dog, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, Tampa Bay has the better offense in this game, and I'd argue a comparable defense. As good as the Saints defense is on paper, I think they can play good defense as well.
The Saints, they looked like the Saints they look like a 13-3 team, or they go 12-4. They look like a dominant team on only a handful of occasions this year, probably 3 or 4 games. 2 of them came against the Bucs. Those are the 2 games they hang their hat on, and then they kind of fart out wins against the Bears 21-9, where you're just that's they didn't look that great. They look fine. I don't know. I just think the Bucs are the better team. If you're looking at the roster as a whole right now and what they can do offensively, they are the better team. It's tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. I just think Todd Bowles has to be embarrassed after the first 2 games. Tom Brady has to be embarrassed after the first 2 games.
The last time they faced off was down is a game, wasn't it?
No. The last time they faced off was Tom Brady throwing picks left and right, and they just got blown out.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Who was he going against in that one?
The
I don't even remember that game.
fourth down game.
The only thing I remember is him being like, it's fourth down. But I don't remember who they went against.
I was like, it was a primetime game too.
It was.
Remember.
I think if I had to pick something here, I think a big element here is Tom Brady in a dome. Steve Palazzolo, Boston native, always brings up Tom Brady. Tom Brady in a dome is a different breed. And I think
He just always brings up Tom Brady
he brings up Tom Brady, period. But yes, you have Drew Brees in a dome, and Drew Brees, he says it all the time, has benefited from playing a bulk majority of his career in a dome. Tom Brady in a dome, I think, can light them up. And Mike Evans playing banged up last week still looked very good. Antonio Brown is coming on for this offense. I think he has like 4 or 5 touchdowns in the last few weeks. I really, and Chris Godwin had 5 drops last week. That's going to positively regress. Okay, like he's very good at catching the football.
Bragging about his hands too. They're like best hands ever.
Tom Brady says he has the best hands ever of any receiver he's played with, which is a shot at Randy Moss and Julian Edelman and Wes Welker.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Speaking of Brady, it was the Bears game.
Yeah,
Which you forgot to say. Yeah,
it was
Bears
the Bears
game.
game.
Yep.
I was gonna say the Bears, but I didn't think about that. Did you say and N'Keal Harry?
Yeah.
And Jacoby Myers. All right. I think if I had to pick something here, I'm going Tampa Bay plus 145 on the money line.
Yeah, I am too. I think Tampa Bay money line is the play. I'm picking them straight up. I think they win this game.
And again, I bring up key numbers here because not everyone bets every single week like maybe I do or you do or whoever does. But key number at 3, you could probably want to lean on Tampa Bay plus 3 because there's a chance that they do lose this game by 3 and you end up getting a push. But I think if you're looking to like make money on this bet, I do like the plus 145. I think that's the move. All right, let's now go ahead and jump to the second part of this podcast here. But before we do so, let's take a quick break. Dane Brugler of The Athletic and PFF's own Anthony Treash recently published mock drafts. Dane Brugler, a 2-round mock draft on theathletic.com. If you don't have a subscription,
showed me up with that. I only won 18 picks and he goes 2 rounds. Dane, we're gonna have to he's just owning.
Dude,
me.
everyone's just trying to own you right now.
I know.
Everyone's there's a target on your back. After that viral tweet, we didn't even bring up the viral tweet.
Oh yeah, the viral tweet.
So you hit on some really good keywords, and you did it in prime time. Keywords, NCAA 14. There's a cult-like following for that game. 2, you tweeted during the national championship. Twitter rolls during game time. Very good stuff there. The Wyoming slander, though, that was brutal. So for those who don't know, bring up the tweet.
Oh, okay. So what was the tweet was? Gosh, it was that it was Nick Saban has reached the stage where he's so dominant that, let me just bring up the actual tweet.
I have it right here. Nick Saban has reached the stage in NCAA 14 dynasty mode where you're so dominant that it's not fun anymore. So you start over with Wyoming. And it went off like 60,000 likes?
Like 70,000 likes now.
70,000 likes. ESPN featured it in a tweet. SportsCenter had it on Instagram. When you're famous and you're more famous than you are now, of course, just don't forget about us little guys. Me and Quinn.
Yeah, we can't hang out anymore after this.
No, that's fair too. That's fair too.
But it was, full disclosure, last NCAA game I had was 09. Back in college. Did not actually ever have 14.
So you're a fraud.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the same shit. But then I also was like, the first school I thought of was Army. But I'm like, I don't want to do that to the troops.
No, never do that to the troops.
So it's like Wyoming. But it actually came to me in the shower. I was showering at halftime because I got home right after working out. And I was like, "Oh shit, that's a good." I cut the shower off early. I'm like, "This one's
an early shower for good reason." All right, let's get back to these mock drafts here. Go to The Athletic, subscribe so you can read the full mock draft. We're only going to touch on some of the key picks in the second round because he does a first round mock.
I want to start though at 3 overall. So he's the Zach. He loves Zach Wilson. He hasn't gone to the Jets. He's the one who's been banging the table for that. He started that table to bang. 3, he has Devontae Smith. I'm not banging any tables anytime soon, but Devontae Smith at 3 to the Dolphins is a wild one to me.
Especially because Dane Brugler has always been the guy that talks about traits in the first round, talks about like bringing like elite athletes and elite like ceilings in the first round, especially high in the first round. To go Devontae Smith, I think that does speak volumes to what he sees in him as a player. And also, when you're bringing up guys like Mache, Kuiper, Brugler, they have better connections to the NFL than we do. They have conversations with legit guys who are scouting in the NFL and GMs and stuff like that. I know you do it too as well. But I think it also is speaking volumes to what the NFL thinks about this kid.
I just am very floored. I think it's more because he's not high on Sewell. But like, if you're the Miami Dolphins, I don't know. I guess you're pairing him back with Tua Tagovailoa, like that whole conversation. But you can get a wide receiver at 18. You can't get a Penei Sewell at 18, I don't think. So
there you have it. Well, another thing with Penei Sewell, kind of in the first round before we jump to his second round, remember, you can see the full mock draft on theathletic.com, but he has 7 offensive tackles going in the first 39 picks and 2 additional interior offensive linemen going in the first 39 picks.
It's a deep tackle class.
That is, and we've talked about it before, where like Tristan Wirfs, Andrew Thomas, Mekhi Becton, like this was a legit offensive tackle class last year. All these guys going in top 15 picks. Mm-hmm. You have 7 now going in the first 39. This is a good class to need an offensive tackle. So much that a team that immediately comes to mind for me, Cincinnati Bengals, if Penei Sewell's not there, you don't have to force it. You don't have to force it and take an offensive tackle at 5. Mm-hmm. If you trade down and you want to grab a Rashawn Slater or a Darisaw, let's run it. But you don't have to take an offensive tackle at 5. You can find that guy at the top of the second round. Leatherwood could fall there. You have Sam Cosmi could drop to that level. Like
that's who he has him in the mock draft, both falling there. And I think that's one of the, like usually we say it's a scarce position. Every team, there's probably only 3 or 4 teams in the NFL that don't need a tackle. So it's like every team could use one. But I think this is the year that you could actually find one at the top of the second round.
This is an exciting offensive line class for sure, because even the 2 interior offensive linemen he has going high are really good players as well. It's Elijah Vera Tucker and Jalen Mayfield?
Wyatt Davis.
Oh, Wyatt Davis. Jalen Mayfield, he lists as a tackle guard, but probably plays tackle in the NFL, the Michigan guy. All right, let's jump to Najee Harris. RB1. Goes to Tampa Bay at 27. We obviously are against drafting running backs in the first round, but talk about Najee Harris as RB1 over Travis Etienne.
This one, with all we know about situation mattering for running backs, I cannot get on board with this. I cannot get on board with Najee Harris as RB1 when he had the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. You had the best offensive line in college football. As a Notre Dame homer, I would have loved for it to go to my Irish, but no, Alabama is a better offensive line. I will admit that. They have far more NFL talent. And so he was on the most talented offensive line with the most explosive passing game that everyone wanted to game plan for. Average 5.8 yards carry. Like, not that yards per carry is everything, but like, if this guy was a true difference maker that was going to change your franchise enough that you need to draft him with the 27th overall pick, and that enough that he's going to be different than the guy you're going to get in the 4th round or the UDFA like James Robinson this year, you would think he would produce a little bit more behind the best offensive line in the NFL.
It's going to be tough to watch if both.
I can't get on board with him that high. He's not that fast.
It's going to be tough to watch Najee Harris and Travis Etienne go in like the first 30, 40 picks. Because I still feel like there is better value on the board at different positions. And Najee Harris at RB1 over Etienne, like you said, is in its own right an interesting take. All right, no safety in the first round. You really like Trayvon Moehrig, and you see him as a first-round player.
Yes.
But he does not go in the first round. No safety goes in the first round.
Yes.
For Dane Brugler.
Safety's getting hated on, and I get why. It is a difficult position to scout, and it's very much dependent on role and all those sort of things, and they're not that involved. But I think versatile guys like Moehrig, who are versatile enough to go anywhere on your defense, are getting more and more valuable. And pretty much every team in the NFL is playing 3 safeties more than they play 3 linebackers. Like, it is you need more safeties than you do linebackers at this point in time in the NFL. And if I were an NFL team, if I was running a franchise, I would be loading up on these guys on day 2 because of where the value is kind of sitting at that position. No one's really wanting. I'd be drafting the Xavier McKinneys of the world. I'd be drafting the Trayvon Moehrigs of the world. I would be drafting these guys wholesale, round 2, round 3, and have a defense that has all these versatile guys on the back end, because I think that's what wins in today's NFL.
I mean, Jesse Bates wasn't a first rounder. That's another guy too.
Yeah.
Like, I do agree that like there is some market inefficiency on day 2, day 3, where there's some really, really talented safeties. And that's also evident in recent free agency. Like Trey Boston, couldn't find a job for a while, but he's been one of the more productive safeties in the NFL. There's other safeties too. I'm trying to think of guys that have like DJ Swearinger, like bounces around from team to team, but still can come out and produce as a safety.
Well, he's different case.
He's a different case. He's a different case. But I do
Chauncey
think that
Gardner-Johnson, 4th rounder, been
True.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, getting guys kicked out left and right against them. That has value.
That does have value. Some picks on the second round that we wanted to touch on before we jump to Anthony's mock draft. Chaz Surratt going to the Cardinals at 49. Get some athletes at linebacker. Got Chaz Surratt and Isaiah Simmons.
Linebacker.
And I think, so the reason I wanted to highlight this pick, is that Chaz Surratt, I remember before the season, we said, hey, he plays well, shows some growth, he could be a first rounder. Yeah. Never loved the value in the first round. Where I do love it though, and you talk about racking up value on day 2, Chaz Surratt on day 2 is an awesome pick. Mm-hmm. If you can get him in the 40s and the 50s, an athlete like that. I looked up his background. He might have the most successful high school career of any freaking player in this class. The guy was like a 3-sport athlete, lettered in all 3. I think it was basketball, baseball, football, whatever it was. 4.5 GPA. And he freaking watched the coach's like sons or something. Like he was a babysitter too. Like the dude is like the nicest guy in the world.
So he's a nerd.
He's not a nerd. He's not a nerd.
I don't want nerds on my football team.
Does he love it? Does he need it? Does he need football enough? He's a leader of men.
And then, so people don't know this too. I mean, some people don't know this. Chaz Surratt was recruited as, I think it's like a 3-star quarterback.
Yeah.
And like threw for a ton of yards in high school. It was like one of the better quarterbacks in all of North Carolina. He's from North Carolina. Goes to UNC, plays quarterback for the first 2 years, makes a pivot, selfless pivot to linebacker, and lights it up for them as well. Like, I mean, this guy, I really do think he's one of those guys that wherever you take him, I don't see him leaving the NFL for 10, 15 years. He could be at his floor, your buddy Nick Ballore, where he's just like in the NFL playing special teams forever because I feel like he's that type of player. In addition to having the ceiling that he could be a legit starting linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, to me, he always should have played like the same role that Jeremiah Usikoromoa played in Notre Dame's defense, but he kind of got screwed because they stuck him at Mike linebacker. And so he was having to take on blocks between the tackles and just wasn't ready for that because dude played quarterback a year and a half ago. But down the stretch, he only missed 1 tackle in his final 5 games.
That's huge.
1.
And tackles were a problem for him last year.
Finished with an 81.7 tackling grade this year after a 50.2. Like you saw the growth in areas. Now, taking on blocks, whatnot. He's still an undersized guy. That's still something that has to change in his game. But the athleticism and the growth is there for a guy. And yes, he's on the older side, but like he's young to the position.
I haven't talked to the guy, and I wouldn't finalize this take until I talk to him. But from what I've seen from a background perspective and how much he's grown on the field, you can bank on this guy playing his best football in the next few years. Like you haven't seen it yet. Like you have not seen Chaz Surratt's best football at linebacker. He's only been playing it for 2 years, but 4.5 GPA, playing all those different sports, watching kids, watching his coach's kids. Like this guy, I think has the will, the development. Like he is a guy that you can develop.
Good face too.
Good
that
face.
Matters.
Good face. All right, let's jump to Ifeatu Melifonwu, the Syracuse cornerback, not former brother, current brother, still his brother, of Obi Melifonwu, the former second-round pick out of UConn that went to the then Oakland Raiders. Did not pan out despite being this absolutely athletic freak. Yeah. Obi Melifonwu like broke records at the combine.
Yeah, I mean, Ifeatu's going to be a freak too. That guy's Ifeatu. Excuse me. 6'3", 213 at cornerback, and he's probably going to run he's probably going to test like similarly. That guy can move.
Dude, absolutely. And he's got length, he's got speed, he's got athleticism. And he plays outside corner. And I think he had some really good tape. Like, he had some really good tape in press, specifically. I thought his press reps were really, really good at Syracuse.
If you remember Obi coming out, everyone's like, ooh, maybe like teams are thinking about him as corner. Teams thinking about moving him as corner.
He probably should have played corner.
Probably should have played corner because he was
soft.
Physical. And the problem is like, Ifeatu, not physical either. Like,
but you can get away with that at outside corner.
And you can. But like, if you draft a guy who's 6'3", 213, you would like for them to be physical on the outside. Like that your advantage should be because you like how you get physical with opposing wide receivers. And he just was the opposite of that at Syracuse, which is like concerning because teams couldn't coach that into Obi.
You can't coach that into anybody.
Now I would say like that's not necessarily like I'm not going to same family scout. Like they are different human beings, but like it is a difficult thing to like instill into somebody. Hey, play that way. You kind of got it or you don't.
Yeah, I would agree. But I think I really like his game, regardless of his physicality. You like the traits, and I think he's put good tape on at outside corner. I think he can be a legitimate piece. And going at 50 to the Browns in the second round, again, similar to Chaz Surratt, it's like really, really good athlete where he needs to develop in some areas, but I think it's worth it in the second round.
I would not be surprised if the Browns, I don't want to say copy the Ravens idea, but like, yeah, they just got Denzel Ward, they just got Ronnie Harrison, they just got the Greedy Williams, they just got the other safety last year who tore his Achilles that I'm just terrible at names on.
Grant Delpit.
Grant Delpit. I wouldn't be surprised if they go that route when they're just like keep loading up, like keep going at that position.
The Buccaneers route.
Buccaneers, Ravens, sharp teams are realizing that, hey, it's a weak link prophecy, pass coverage. They're going to attack your worst player, so don't have any bad players.
Yeah. 2 more picks here, and then we'll jump to Anthony's mock draft. Rondale Moore goes in the second round, number 53 to the Tennessee Titans. I like the fit a lot with A.J. Brown on the outside, and then you have Rondale Moore coming under, in the slot, working the underneath stuff and being that yak guy for them. Because A.J. Brown's got a lot of yak, but like you can push the ball downfield to A.J. Brown. You get Rondale Moore taking on some of those underneath routes. That's a very, very dynamic receiving core.
Rondale's going to be a tough sell because, 5'9", 190. It's going to be a tough sell in the first round. That's not what you're going to look for.
And the injuries, and he hasn't played a lot.
But, man, if he's better than the 53rd most talented player in this class. That is not even like a debate in my mind. He's better. The guy, Diami Brown, goes ahead of him, North Carolina wide receiver in this mock draft. He's a more talented football player than Diami Brown. I don't think anyone would ever debate that. But the kind of red flags of not having played much football, the role he played in that Purdue offense where they're not even like asking him to run routes half the plays. They're just kind of like shoveling him the ball, feeding him, is going to look bad. But I just think if he were to have played a role like, I don't know, like Devontae Smith's way, if he played him in that similar role, like he would have produced in a similar manner. They just didn't necessarily give him the opportunity to throw the ball down the field. I do think he's going to be one of the steals of the draft because I do think he falls out of the first round.
It's still wild to me that, Rondale Moore did go to Purdue. He had over 30 scholarship offers coming out of Kentucky. He was the Gatorade Kentucky Player of the Year in 2017. Broke school records there for receptions and all this shit. Ran a 4.33. Had the highest SPARQ score of any player in the country coming out. Had offers from Bama, Texas. Pretty much any big program gave him an offer. He goes to Purdue. And
that's the thing. Like he legitimately is a freak athlete. This guy is a monster. Like you said, 4.33, highest SPARQ score. He is differently built than your average 5'9" wide receiver. He can do different things. It's just I worry that teams are kind of going to overthink it with and in a loaded wide receiver class, it's difficult not to.
I think he should go early day 2. I think round 1, I do agree with a lot of the disagreements that NFL front offices will have. Like I've seen this movie before. Smaller receiver, gadget player, ton of injuries. I'm scared. Top of day 2, you better sprint the card in because I do think it's worth it at that point. It's worth the risk. Again, and I think that's the theme through day 2. Attack really, really good athletes with question marks elsewhere on day 2. Attack really, really good athletes with fewer or no question marks on day 1. Like that's the model. That's what you need to do if you're going to get value out of those picks. And also tack them at high positional value. Don't tack a legitimate athlete with no question marks at long snapper. Okay, that's probably not the move. All right, last one we'll bring up here for Dane, and I wanted to add this one because he had 7 offensive tackles going in the first 39 picks, and that didn't even include Alex Leatherwood, who goes 54 to the Colts, and Anthony Costanzo, the left tackle now, currently retired. Alex Leatherwood at 54. I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect. I mean, obviously, he's not going in among the first 7 offensive tackles taken, but I think he's a damn good one. And to get him at 74, I think there's enough there for Leatherwood to develop as a swing tackle early and potentially be a starter in the NFL.
Yeah, I just compare Leatherwood to a guy like, let's say, like Jawan Taylor coming out. Leatherwood's a better prospect than Jawan Taylor was coming out. I think you'd like them both for the similar aspects in terms of like the power they can generate. How like they're not freakishly athletic, but they're smooth in pass protection. And if Leatherwood's fallen to 54 when Jawan Taylor slipped just like 34, 35, something like that, just at the top of the second round, like that's why I'm saying this tackle class is different than tackle classes in years prior, where you can actually start to find talent in the middle of the second round that could probably step in and start for you right away and not be liabilities, which doesn't happen every year. So I do think,
and that's huge value.
Yeah.
If you can find offensive tackles of Leatherwood's capabilities in the second round, you're freaking making moves there.
That tackle class with Wirfs, Thomas, Becton, Leatherwood was the number 1 recruit that year at tackle.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I think you brought that up before, but it still blows me away.
Recruit.
All right, let's go to Anthony Treash's mock draft. He only did 1 round, but he did more picks than your dumbass. And we're going to look at some of the... That was rude.
No, I mean, he did.
But I want to look at some notables here. Remember, we're not going over through every pick of the mock draft. We didn't do that for Dane. We're not doing that for Treash. If you want to check them out, Google them and go find them on the site. We're just going to talk about some notables here.
Just telling them to Google them. Just give them like a link.
Go to pff.com, pff.com/mock. You'll probably get there eventually. Anthony Treash has 5 quarterbacks going in the top 10. It doesn't happen. And remember, PFF mocks are always going to be way different than other mocks because we're doing them how we would do them. Some positional value is massive. You're going to see a lot of receivers. You're going to see a lot of tackles. You're going to see quarterbacks, corners. Those are the guys that go early in our mocks because you're looking at positional value. Quarterbacks, 5 go in the top 10. I don't think Mac Jones sneaks in there. I'm sorry. Maybe 4 with Trey Lance as the 4th guy, but I don't think Mac Jones goes in the top 10.
I would be floored if he went in the top 10. I don't see it. And now desperation can hit, but I don't see him going top 10. 2, I don't see him. He hasn't going above Trey Lance in this one.
He does.
Yeah, I just think Trey Lance, what he offers from the NFL perspective, teams are going to fall in love with that. Be quicker to fall in love with that.
So I tweeted out, this is kind of on the quarterback conversation. I tweeted out some clips of Justin Fields, some of his best throws this season, and talked about how, I would argue Lawrence, Lance, and Wilson have better arm talent than Justin Fields. But Justin Fields has enough arm talent to still be a very good quarterback in the NFL and is really good with touch passes down the football field. He's also, over the past 3 years, he has the highest single season accuracy percentage of any quarterback over the past 3 years on throws of 5+ air yards. So trying to get some things downfield, not looking at screens and behind the line of scrimmage stuff. I think he's one of the most, if not the most accurate quarterback in this class based off collegiate production. Probably regressed a little bit, but that I think is what's most impressive with Justin Fields. And that doesn't even factor in the athletic ability, the size, and the rushing floor he offers, probably even above Zach Wilson, who's also mobile in his own right. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, that guy could run a fucking 4.5. I mean, he's like a legitimate athlete. He probably won't get used like one. But I do think Justin Fields, man, I came away really impressed with his tape, watching it a little bit more in detail the other day. And I think he ultimately becomes either the 2nd or 3rd quarterback off the board, and then a GM salivating over Trey Lance's tools and traits, because that's another guy that has legit arm talent and athleticism, goes 4th. And then Mac Jones, I think still goes in the 1st round.
Yeah.
I think Dane Brugler had him going 28th to the Pittsburgh Steelers, something along those lines. I think that's the more range for Mac Jones. 2 picks I'll highlight here. He has Jamar Chase going to Atlanta and Penei Sewell going to Cincinnati after the top 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. Jamar Chase to Atlanta, the Falcons fans will hate it because we have Julio Jones, we have Calvin Ridley. What are you doing? I still think the value at 4, if you're not going to trade out of that pick and already the first 3 quarterbacks are off the board, I kind of like it. I kind of like Jamar Chase over Trey Lance at the 4 spot for Atlanta. What's your take there?
If Penei Sewell is on the board, I'm still going Penei Sewell. If I'm literally anyone
At 4, after 4?
Yeah. If Penei Sewell's on the board, I'm going Penei Sewell. But if Penei Sewell's not on the board, if I'm Atlanta's GM and I'm walking in and I'm looking at that roster, I'm objectively saying I have 6 or so starting positions I need to upgrade. 1 4th overall pick's not getting me back to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I don't care who it is. You're going to Chase Young. You're not getting back to the playoffs in that division if you're Atlanta. You need a lot of help. I'm trading that 4th overall pick 9 times out of 10 if I'm the Atlanta Falcons in this draft, because I don't think there's one. To me, there's kind of like a tier once you get to, we'll talk about this more in depth as it goes along, but once you get to Kyle, it's the top 9 or so players in this class I think are special. And then there's a tier from 11 to 30 where the difference is not that big in terms of the quality of prospects.
And that's usually every class, right?
I think sometimes the tiers can be earlier and there can be more tiers in there. But I think 11 to 30, there's not a lot of guys in that tier I would want to draft in the top 10. And then there's not a lot of guys. But I draft them all I'd love to draft them all 23rd. So I think this is a draft class to move back. And if you're in the top 10 and don't necessarily, and you need a lot of holes to fill, there's a lot of guys I think that if you're getting multiple picks, you can fill it with. And
in this situation, I don't know how valuable that 4th pick will be if the first 3 quarterbacks are off the board. But I do think there's a scenario where there is one of the top 3 guys left and they can have some opportunities to trade down. Penei Sewell to Cincinnati, if he falls to 5, he's the obvious pick. I don't know if he will, but if he falls to 5, he's the obvious pick. Then he has Devontae Smith going to the Philadelphia Eagles, which I think, man, Jalen Reagor didn't play well to start. I think he'll be better in year 2. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has not lived up to expectation. Devontae Smith, adding Devontae Smith here as early as that is, I love Devontae Smith. We've talked about it. I think I'd rather have Jalen Waddle here, but I don't know. I do think that wide receiver is still a need for them. It would just be an awkward situation if he, with some of the data backing, he's an older prospect without the athleticism, all that stuff, that not hitting would be rough to see.
I will say, though, if you're the Eagles, you already have Jalen Waddle in your offense. Like, Jalen Reagor is supposed to be that's his
guy.
role.
Yeah.
You can.
You need a guy that gets open. Devontae Smith gets open.
You can put like a bunch of those guys, but honestly, you really just need one. It would be nice to have two, but like once you have two guys like that aren't necessarily completely wide receivers, there's things you can't necessarily do with them. So they already have that guy in their offense. If I'm the Eagles, I'd probably lean Devontae Smith as well.
So I feel like my mind immediately jumps to like, if it goes bad, it's going to look really bad because Devontae Smith's traits and stuff. But I do think that of the receivers available, I mean, you're right that he's the guy that's going to get open consistently and run, a more diverse route tree, maybe even than Jalen Waddle.
But also, like, if I'm Devontae Smith, I don't want to go to Philadelphia either.
Well, that's not his choice, Mike. All right, Jalen Waddle goes to Detroit at 7. I think that's an interesting pick. I think all of their receivers are free agents. Danny Amendola, Kenny Galladay, and Marvin Jones are all free agents. They probably re-sign Galladay, maybe.
I would hope for their sake. But
you have to hope. And then if you add Jalen Waddle with Kenny Galladay,
Galladay would be fun.
That would be a good receiving core. All right, 2 more here. He has Trayvon Moore, a safety, your guy, going to the Las Vegas Raiders. They just added Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator. I have a take on that.
Tweeted out Ken Wisenhunt.
Not Ken Wisenhunt. That was a funny tweet from that account on Twitter. But what do you think about Trayvon Moore? Again, Gus Bradley's defense wants to play a ton of cover 3, doesn't blitz a ton, plays a ton of dime.
The only thing is so Gus Bradley's defense theoretically is the best case scenario for Jonathan Abram. If he just plays in the box, in that is like where everyone would say his best role is for them. So and that would be where you'd want to play Trayvon Moore too. So Treash, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think he did this before the Gus Bradley hire. But
yeah, fair. But I'm just saying that to me.
I think they played Jonathan Abram at free safety in that defense for the content alone.
Dude, if you have him roam in the middle of the field, they're just going to be like the most post. They're just going to get straight. I mean, Tyreek Hill is going to go for 1,000 yards against them next year if that's the case.
Here's the take on Gus Bradley, and he said it in his first presser with the team. Got to build in the defense. Defensive line, sorry. Got to build up the defensive line because he does not blitz a lot. Over the past 4 years, he's blitzed at the lowest rate, 16%, 4% lower than any team in the NFL. And he did that because what? Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, he had a very good pass rush. The Las Vegas Raiders need that, and they needed that overnight. Here's what's going to happen. They are going to break the bank for some of these defensive linemen available in free agency, and they're the wrong ones. Shaquille Barrett, Bud Dupree, Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson. No guys that you really want to be breaking the bank for, but they're going to force it, to try and make Gus Bradley's defense work. And I don't think Bud Dupree, as your number one pass rusher, opposite of a combination of Max Crosby, Cleveland Ferrell, and Arden Key, is going to have the same success as he did in Blitzburg. Leonard Williams has never been a legitimate pass rusher on the interior, always a run defender first. Of those guys that I like, it's probably Dalvin Tomlinson because they need a big dude down low that can actually defend the run. That isn't what Jonathan Hankins, who they've had in recent years.
Yeah, they are still bad along the defensive line.
But I think they're going to try and get better very quickly, and it's the wrong free agent class to do it.
I think this is the draft to do it, though. Like, the edge class is pretty deep. That's where I would be looking if I'm Las Vegas.
How unfortunate is that to take Cleveland Ferrell, Arden Key, Max Crosby, Maurice Hurst, sign fucking Malik Collins, and still be crying for help, desperado for defensive line help. That is not good, as some would say. All right, last pick here, and then we'll finish the pod. Elijah Moore, the Ole Miss slot receiver, who I need to go back and watch because I've seen him in 2 first-round mock drafts now. And I think originally smaller slot type that had a lot of scheme production at Ole Miss with a very good quarterback in Matt Corral, who played really well this year. I need to go back and watch and see him against single coverage, see how he's getting open because now Anthony Treash is on board with him. He was talking to me about, I think some of his analysis is good. Baltimore doesn't need this big possession type alpha because Lamar Jackson throwing to the receiver's leverage and one-on-one with a guy who's not creating a ton of separation probably isn't the move. He needs guys that consistently get open, and if Elijah Moore can do that over the middle of the field, I think that's big for him.
I disagree.
Really?
I think he needs he throws to Mark Andrews because where he throws over the middle of the field, the catch radius matters a lot. That's the routes he likes to throw. Elijah Moore, not a catch radius guy over the middle of the field. If I'm looking for a slot receiver in that Baltimore Ravens offense, I think that's why they drafted Miles Boykin. I think they want someone who has – they drafted Marquise Brown to be the deep threat, to be the guy that stretches the field. And, yes, he's been productive, but Lamar's also missed him a lot down the football field. Like, that's
They need a
not where
consistent slot guy, though.
They need the guy who will rack in stuff over the middle of the field, because that is where that offense thrives. So
They either need what Miles Boykin was supposed to be, or maybe what Willie Snead, a combination of what they've tried to make Willie Snead and Seth Roberts in the slot over the past few years.
they need Kyle Pitts is what they need.
I love the
I'm
Kyle
trying to
Pitts pick. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
They're not going to get him. It's too late. But I do think I like the Kyle Pitts pick to Baltimore if they could fling it. Fling it? Swing it? Either way. All right, finishing the podcast with this. We are getting a ton of questions for the mailbag episode. We record the mailbag episode tomorrow at 2. We are going to answer the questions left in our podcast reviews on Apple first. Then we're going to answer the questions we found in the YouTube videos of the past 2 days. Then we're going to answer the questions on Twitter. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. So if you want to make sure your question gets answered, go to Apple Podcasts, rate and review the podcast. If you can't do that, go to YouTube. That's the second tier. Then after that, it is the tweet that you're going to send out today or tomorrow about an AMA for the Friday podcast. We're excited, though, because there's a ton of good questions.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate all the questions that have come in. It's going to be some really, really good
That episode's going to
content.
start growing. It was what, like 45 minutes? It might be, that one might be well over an hour here.
That
soon.
one might be a long one. And it's exciting because I do think that questions matter in draft season because there's so many things that can happen and so many different ways you could build a roster. I think that's going to be an exciting time. Really, really looking forward to the mailbag episode.
Like kind of what I just said there about Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. Like I can rank Jalen Waddle ahead of Devontae Smith, but for the Eagles, like I said, you will want Devontae Smith over Jalen Waddle. Like they're every team and what their needs are unique, and that's why they're going to have unique draft boards. Ours and what I'm saying in my rankings are kind of just like throwing out talent out into the ether, which is realistically not how it works, and that's why it's a difficult job to do from the outside looking in terms of accurately.
Hey, pity you.
I know.
Man.
Thank you for your service.
Gosh. What'd you say, Quinn?
Thank you for your service.
No, thank you for your service. I would agree with Quinn.
Hey.
There. Like honestly, bear that cross, man. It's a burden, obviously.
I know.
I'm sorry that you have to do it. If you ever need like extra breaks or anything, let me know, man. Because I know you're going through it right now. Dry January is probably hitting different too. How's that going, by the way?
It's actually been really good.
Really good?
I
Nice.
wake up every day and that's the best I feel all day.
I might do a dry Feb for coffee.
The shortest month.
How do you feel about a coffee dry?
No, I
There's
would
no
never
way I could
actually.
do that. I don't think I could do that.
I mean, I would be housing energy drinks.
Fair enough. Fair
Which
enough.
is like way worse.
Or smelling salts. I can pivot from coffee to smelling salts for Feb. We'll think about it. All right, that's going to do it for 2-for-1 Drafts. Remember, mailbag episode, rate and review the podcast. If we don't get them tomorrow, we'll get them on the next podcast if you do rate and review the podcast. Until next time, Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, 2-for-1 Drafts.